AZ Ballot Breakdown. Ballot Breakdown.
Broomhead breaks down who and what are on your ballot. AZ Ballot Breakdown.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here. We're going to do this throughout the election cycle in more segments than just this, but every day we're going to break down something on the ballot and something I think is going to affect the ballot in November. The jury selection for the criminal trial of former President Trump continues today. And it's interesting with some of the statistics that are out there. There's, I think, only a third of the people in the country think that the former president did anything criminally, although many people think he did something wrong. But how will it affect the polling moving forward? We are watching a very narrowing of the polls. The former president enjoyed a lead in many of the polls. Now it is at a dead heat in many of those. He still holds a lead in Arizona. But will a criminal trial and maybe even a criminal conviction, they say that this trial may be decided before Memorial Day, which is toward the end of May. Are we going to see in this country, are we going to see a former president convicted of a crime? How would that affect people's willingness to vote for him? His base is still solidly behind him. There's no doubt about that. But you also have this uprising in recent years, and I think this is a warning sign to both of the major political parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, that more and more people, especially younger people, are registering as party non-declared. When you talk to them about issues, they have specific feelings about issues. Many of them lean left, many of them lean right, but they are no longer going to be party loyalists. And this is where I think these questions have the most impact. Because if you look, there's something that both parties do it, and they call it a slate. And what you want is issues on a ballot many times, because if you're an issue candidate, let's say you're a Democrat, and the issue on the ballot was the legalization of marijuana a few years ago, or the decriminalization, I should say. Democrats knew that was a favorable issue for them. A lot of Democrats wanted to see it legalized. So while they are there going to the polls to vote on that being an issue voter, they're going to vote mostly Democrat down ticket. We're seeing less of that. Parties put out a slate, and it happens locally quite often, where some call it a golden ticket, whatever you want to call it, where a district will say, okay, here's who we recommend you vote for. And they put the list of names for all the offices on the ballot, and sometimes even the issues, vote yes on this, vote no on that. Less and less people are paying attention to those things. They're looking at other stuff. How much of this? There's a question. One of the stories I have in front of me is the other side of this. Experts warn over a wobbly U.S. economy, and this is not my headline, by the way, and it says Biden's economic lie. The issue of going back to this, inflation was going to be transitory, that it was going to be very short-lived, and it hasn't been that way. And inflation has been hanging on much longer, and people are very concerned about the economy of the United States. Is this going to be something that plays against him in November? Again, party loyalists aside, and that's what you're going to have. It used to just be about turnout. It's more than just turnout now. It used to be rally the base, and on election day, or now we have an election month with the mail-in voting, but when it comes election time, how can we get our base to understand they have to vote? Just because you're a registered voter doesn't mean people are going to vote. Are we going to see people sit on their hands when it comes to the presidential election because they're not fans of either person? We just watched last week, we talked about a big study that said people believe, and there's a great number of people that when asked, believe both Donald Trump and Joe Biden have done damage as president. That should be worrisome for both sides of this conversation. And here's another thing that goes into this. Bill Maher, who we know he's a self-proclaimed liberal. But what I like about Bill Maher is he understands the independent voters that are out there, which has made his show so very successful, that he has been openly critical of the Democrats, much like I've been openly critical of other Republicans when I believe the Republican Party gets it wrong. I've been a lifelong Republican. I've been a staunch Republican my whole life, but when my party gets it wrong, I want to be able to be someone that stands up and say, I think you are getting this one wrong. And he does. He went after CNN, and he said that he's bored with he's talking about the nonstop Trump bashing on CNN. No one's been harder on him than me, he says, and I'm bored with it. And so he was talking about this, the issue of how being hypercritical. There's two things that can happen. If CNN's the only place you consume news, you know what you're going to get. If Fox News is the only place you consume news, you know what you're going to get, or MSNBC. Are people seeking out truth, or are they seeking out what they want to hear? Are they only going to one source and so only getting one source of news? That's going to be a big question in all of this. How much does social media play a role? All of these things are leading us down the path in this election cycle. It is important. If you look at the issues without, if you just want to take a raw look, an unbiased look at the issues, we've created so much debt in this country. I don't care who you blame for the creation of it. And if you look how it was done, we had COVID start under President Trump. President Trump is the one that authorized the expedited manufacturing of a vaccine. We paid billions of dollars up front to get it manufactured so that when it was ready to be distributed, it was approved by the FDA, that it was in places everywhere in the country immediately for use. That cost a ton of money. It was then perpetuated beyond that when President Biden got into office. We began to spend billions and billions, I would say trillions of dollars, propping up the U.S. economy in both administrations. Republicans have been in control for part of it, Democrats in control for part of it. Both parties spent an outrageous amount of money. We are spending, and we're going to talk more about this coming up in the near future, and we're going to talk about this specifically, but the national debt that's being created. We're spending 39 cents of every dollar collected by the United States Treasury in income taxes. 39 cents of every dollar is just paying for interest on the debt. Will the American people be looking to someone that is going to commit to lowering federal spending? Will that matter to the American people? The border issues that we have. Are we going to look to a solution to this huge problem of asylum seekers in the U.S. that are not entitled to asylum? Are there going to be repercussions for people that make false asylum claims? That would be one of the steps in the right direction, that if you come to the U.S. and you make a claim for asylum and it turns out to be a false claim, what are those repercussions? To get people to do it the right way. All of these questions are the issues Americans should be looking at. But you've got to know that both candidates, you are going to have the Biden campaign is going to focus on the criminal trials and the legal troubles of the former president. And you know that former President Trump is going to talk about the age of Joe Biden and what was said about the president and his inability to act in his own defense and not being up to the job, that he's elderly and he can't do the job. All of this is going to be a personality contest. But in the end, will the American people look at issues? And I think independent voters will. I think the independent voters that are not tied to one candidate or the other are going to look at the issues that face America and choose which person they believe is best to fix or to maintain or to manage those issues. And when it comes to the Congress, I'm so torn on how those races are going to go and what the voters are going to look at and who is going to end up controlling the Congress. Who's going to control the House? There is a very small lead for Republicans there. Will they increase that lead? Or will the Democrats come in and take over the House? What happens in the Senate with a tie in the United States Senate? Are we going to see Republicans take over the Senate? It's a great question. I mean, these are really good questions, and I'm anxious to see what the answers are in November.
Thanks for watching The Mike Broomhead Show. Tap to watch the first season of Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast. You can also click the button in the middle to subscribe.